Hey, so let's get let me share. We'll give people a couple of minutes to join. All right. And I didn't see any notice from Dan. Do we know if he's going to show up?
I've not heard anything either way.
All right. Well, we've got 6, which is our minimum quorum. Let's see.
Richard's here, so you can mark him down as 7.
Good. Yep. I was looking at another file. Richard. Okay, 7. So we have 7. All right, does anyone, so I have the agenda here. First one's easy. Second one is something that I don't know that we've worked out that we need to at least get people thinking about. And I don't have a third one. I mean, we have a few announcements, but are there any other agenda items? I guess we could we could have the discussion to fill the life cycle and provisioning chair, because we have a candidate that I think would be good, so we could do that. Any other agenda items? All right, so let's get started. So Artec Colton is now an OPI maintainer. So the existing maintainers agreed. You know, he's done significant contributions, as we saw last week. So this is a good thing.
Yes, a good thing.
Yeah. We have 2 SDC presentations submitted. They were received. You know, we had the preliminary discussion in the agenda committee, and we'll see how we'll see what the agenda looks like. I think we'll be able to get 2 sessions. We may end up with 1, in which case we'll just compress, but it partly depends on track construction and so on. But we can get at least 1 if we want it, and I can push for 2 if we think that's a good idea. So I'm on the agenda committee, and we've done all the preliminary rankings, and we're about to do the track the track building phase, which is really where you decide what all the presentations that are going to go are.
We also submitted to OCP similar sessions, an intro session and a demo session. Not heard anything about that yet.
Okay. And then in about an hour, NTT Labs is going to present their DP use case to the use case working group. So, I strongly encourage everyone to attend that and see what NTT is going to put forward about this, about their use case. It's it has some, interest and so on. And as I said, the whole, these guys are also big into the ion to get an all photonics network that'll be, Japan wide at first, and then then they want to deploy it other places. But Japan has a unique distance density setup to make certain kinds of end-to-end data movement architectures valid, or viable is more correct. So it's like I say, I think it'll be interesting to see what they have to say. And then Sridhar has a official holiday today, so he said that there's an agreement with Hurricane Electric. The signing process has begun, and we should have an address and be ready to go starting next week. Any thoughts, comments on announcements?
Well, that was easy, getting signed up with Hurricane, huh?
Yeah, it only took what, 2 months?
Quite the
Yes.
process.
You get lawyers involved and it gets difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah. Lawyers and lots of companies trying to do common standards for every standard that's ever existed, even when the people are all personally friends.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, at least it's been that way the last 20 years, and I suspect it was that way the 30 or 40 years before that. So okay. So anyway, good. Those are all good announcements. And then Paul needs a volunteer. You don't have one yet, right? You brought
I
it
don't
up.
have one from the technical side. I have one. Myself and Mark on the outreach committee are both went through the training, understand what needs to go on. I actually made the first edit to the website using the new tool, the WordPress tool, published a blog, that sort of thing. So a blog about our half-day event at SmartNIC Summit. So it's out there, and it looks like I did it correctly after about the 5th time. So
Okay. So someone from the TSC can volunteer, or actually pretty much anyone working on the technical side can volunteer. What would be involved, Paul? What would they actually have to do?
it just is someone other than myself and Mark have the ability to just make changes to the website as needed. So if there's a someone from the technical committee who wants to post a technical diagram or something, or make any change whatsoever to the website, they'd be able to do so. It's just kind of being on hand to be call it a maintainer of the website, as it were.
Right. All right. Don't everyone volunteer at once, but we will need to fill that in the next week or two.
Yep. And I'm going to steal the screen real quick.
All right.
Just for this.
Sure.
I would love to. I've got headshots and bios from everybody. I need a headshot from Steve and from Tazi. Those are the two.
And they're both here. You don't have, your company must have done a headshot thing for you at some point. So
yeah.
So
just if you would send those to me, I can.
Really?
Hey, I now have the ability to edit the website, so we can add those.
The only way they got, they realized. Anyway, yeah, I had one done about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They're like, you got to do one. You go to public things, everyone expects pictures now. I'm like, okay, fine. So I don't know if you have anything suitable, send it.
Sure thing, we'll send. Sorry.
What's that?
I'm saying sure thing, we'll send.
Okay.
Thank you, Tess.
Thank you. All right. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is insert an item before we do, general discussion. And maybe there's not a lot of discussion on it. I'll just tell you what I'm worried about, and you can go think about it. But so life cycle and provisioning, as you saw on the TSC private, we have a volunteer with some weight behind him. So I'd like to conclude that now. We don't actually have any other official volunteers at the moment. So and this is I believe a good candidate. So does anyone have any objection to proceeding to fill the life cycle and provision and make it official?
Yeah, I know Boris isn't in this meeting. It would be nice to hear him weigh in on the choice, but other than that,
Well, yeah, but he stepped down, and we need to fill it, and I think this is a very good choice myself.
having a qualified volunteer is as much as we can expect. So
So Joe, I didn't hear who the
Well,
name.
I'll ask Tazi to so it's someone from NVIDIA, and I'll ask Tazi to talk about him here in a second.
Okay.
All right, Tazi, maybe say who this is, and a little bit about their background, and then I think we can then conclude on this one.
Sure thing. So the candidate is Gal Zeidman from a software architecture group within NVIDIA. He's leading the DPU provisioning software architecture in NVIDIA. He joined us from Red Hat around 2 years ago. He was working on similar territory there. He was participating also in the lifecycle working group, provisioning lifecycle working group of OPI so far. He's working internally on similar work, both on internal provisioning work we do for DPUs within NVIDIA, also for the new cluster that we are bringing for NVIDIA. This is public, Israel 1. And we would like to see how we can have standardization around that, around the DPU provisioning in lifecycle. And that's why we thought Gal can be good for that as well.
Questions? Thoughts? Yeah. So I think this is a good, I think this is actually a good fit. And I think there's some, there's some additional common code that can come forward out of it, things like that.
yeah, and I'm encouraged to see NVIDIA deepening its involvement in OPI. That's a big positive for me.
It is. That's another, absolutely. I agree. Any other thoughts? All right, so I guess we'll do so we don't have an established process for this. I read the bylaws. We can just do it any way we like. So I think what we should do is see if there are any objections. If not, I think we should say we agree and make it so. Pull a little Jean-Luc Picard here. All right, so are there any objections? If so, you can text them if you don't want to chat. Somebody texted something. Thank you for nominating. All right, so does anyone have any objection to this going forward? Otherwise, I'll type it in here. I'll paste it in like that and we'll be good. Going once, going twice. All right, sold. We are decided. Congratulations, Tazi and Gal, and NVIDIA, and thank you very much for volunteering.
Thanks, Joe, and everyone for the support.
Absolutely. All right. So what I believe you should do is plan for Gal to run the meeting not next week, because that's actually 4th of July. And I think your attendance will be extremely sparse from anyone who's in the US or works for a US company, because that's actually the 4th of July. And you should plan to resume the lifecycle and provisioning calls, which are 10 a.m. Pacific on Tuesdays on the 11th. In the meantime, you should have Gal introduce on the Slack, lifecycle and provisioning Slack, and on the lifecycle and provisioning work group. I'll post a thing when we're done with this call. I'll post a thing for the general chat and the lifecycle and provisioning, just saying that this has been agreed. And I'll put a thing on the general mailing list, say that this has been agreed. So I'll do just a quick announcement, but Gal can introduce and take over that call and come up to speed on the work. And Gal can always reach out to Boris for what the current state of things were, but also Vipin, you'd be happy to help as well, correct? Well, anyway, I'm sure Vipin would be happy to help with bringing Gal up to speed on other.
Yes, Joe. Yes, Joe. Yeah, I was on mute.
Yeah. So, so we got lots of support for it. So there's, lots of support, and they can also reach out to Dan Daly and have a discussion there. And they can reach out to me if they want to discuss, what we should be driving forward. And then maybe after, maybe on the 20th, we'll have Gal in to talk about, current state and direction going forward here in the TSC. Any other suggestions or thoughts on this?
That sounds like a good plan, Joe.
Okay.
And is that the correct spelling there, Gal Zaidman?
Yeah, because I copied it from an email. It's what's the right pronunciation, Tazi?
Gal Zaidman.
Zaidman.
Also, my name is Tzachi, but I know it's hard to pronounce. So that's fine.
Yours is, say that again, and I'll see if I can memorize it.
Tzachi.
Tahi. Okay, so Gal Zaidman, and thank you, Tahi.
Perfect.
I'll
So
improve.
I'll
My
connect the
Israeli
Gal
accent is poor, sadly, but
I'll connect the Gal with Boris, you, and Vipin.
yep, and we'll go from there.
Okay, cool.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, so okay,
So, Joe, there's a matter of fixing all of our sort of public facing materials that have work group leads and making
Yep.
a change there.
That's why I was asking how to spell it.
So you're going to attack that, Paul?
Yeah, I'll attack the website.
There's also the GitHub as well. I don't know if we may need changes there or not, but
Okay, I'll look.
yeah. All right, pick facing. All right, so we need to update public facing content, update GitHub. Very good points. We'll announce it. And lifecycle and provisioning meetings will
And Paul, make sure we don't use any old slides in these upcoming presentations with the old names. So
Oh,
that would
thank you.
that would be a miss.
Content, which would be website. The website, any TSC patients and decks. Okay. So the life cycle conversion resume on Tuesday, July 11th. And we'll get a readout on the 20th. All right, anything else? Those were all good notes to have to take. Anything else about this? All right, excellent. All right, so I have as future agenda, we need some notion of swordfish and now sunfish. So sunfish is a composition API that DMTF just launched. And do we have anything to do with them? Do we care? Is there any mapping we ought to do? We'll need at some point to do an evaluation of that, right? Because and then the other one is, the SNIA DPU SIG. I don't know if you guys saw some of you guys saw the overview I did. It's mostly a outreach, education, ecosystem group right now. It could become something else, and because I'm co-chair of that, we can easily coordinate and collaborate. And in fact, I'm going to leverage the DPU SIG to help the OPI talks and storage developer conference. But right now we don't have a technical agenda, and I've resisted that because we're doing it in OPI and then Dash. And I didn't want to step on, I don't want to step on my own feet trying to coordinate. But if there's something we think that SNIA would be better off defining, we could always kick it over there and try to build a team under the SNIA umbrella. I haven't thought about what that is yet, but there is, if somebody thinks of something, let's have a discussion and then let's see if there's a proposal to bring in here. And there doesn't have to be anything. Does that make sense? Just think about it. All right, the last topic, and maybe this is again just a 10-minute, 5 or 10 minute thing, or maybe it's just me introducing it, is DPU vendor integration and OPI. So, we're working as though we understood what the proper boundary is between vendor SDKs and vendor code and the rest of OPI. But do we need to write something a little more formal about that? It doesn't have to be like super specky formal, but something about that explains what we're working towards relative to how we integrate the DPU vendor code. And in fact, other software package vendor code, like a firewall or a load balancer or anything like that, and where those boundaries are and what that interaction is. So has the API working group really taken that on, in you guys' opinion, or is that still something that ought to be, really needs to be defined before we can, start making our big shifts. And do the ongoing projects highlight where that boundary is? The ongoing proof of concept use case projects. Or is this a topic, punt it down the road? Yeah, we probably do have to deal with it, but not for a long time. And
So in my opinion, Joe, it's not clear that we've solved that problem, that as someone deploying an application has a clear path on OPI and how to do that on top of a DPU. But I don't feel fair discussing this without Mark in the room.
Okay.
Because I haven't been to all of his meetings. But in my opinion, we're not there yet. And I hope to expose some of that in the F5 use case work. That's, we've been delayed, but we're trying to get that going again. So that was a part of what we were trying to do there, was expose how easy or difficult it is to actually get an end application on top of a DPU.
Right. Yeah,
I know some like Boris think we shouldn't do too much in that space. That's not really our role. I'm not sure I agree with his position on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, and again, there were, a couple of bridges created for vendor, right? There was SPDK and then a couple of vendor bridges created for at least the storage part. And those didn't seem to have a lot of uptake, and I'd be curious to know why. So, but yeah, it's good points, Tim.
And what I'm looking for is more or less of the fully embedded use case, and more of a generic orchestrated, how do I deploy on a CNI that's been installed on top of a DPU? And this is where Boris says, well, those are all solved problems. There's no work to be done there. But I think once you get beyond base deployment and you're actually trying to configure and control elements of the DPU, that's where you run into these APIs that need to work, and they need to be stitched through the CNI somehow.
Yeah, so there's a couple of levels of solved. Can the container infrastructure that exists architecturally support DPUs in the way we keep talking about them? And the answer is it should be able to, yes. If you said, okay, show me exactly how to do that, I think people would be hard pressed to explain all the details, which tells me that it's not a terrible thing to do. In fact, it's probably a good thing to do, but there is some work at doing integration, even with the simplest of other systems that are already existing and developed, just like you're saying. I agree completely with you, Tim.
So we could bring this up as a topic and maybe invite Mark to it in a future meeting.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll ask. I'll send him a text when we're done here and ask him for an update on the 13th. And I'll brainstorm with him a little bit to see if we can have an initial straw man or stronger starting position to have something to actually argue against. So we'll take a position, but it's not meant to be the final answer. And that way we can, and I want Dan in this as well, right? Because the SPDK storage stuff is why I thought about this, the discussion we had last week. And I thought that was a very good effort by those guys. But and it's the right thing to do. So we need more of that. And there are a couple of other examples, and I know the networking API efforts are considering that as well. Isn't that correct, Vipin? that you guys, for the networking model, you guys are looking at how that structure should be.
That structure should be what, Joe?
For the split between the sort of the underlying switching, the APIs and the vendor code to support the underlying switching, right? Because we have to take into account both OVS and Sonic. And then we don't want, 18 different APIs at the top. I mean, it may have 18 different objects you have to configure, more like 50 for networking when you get into everything. But, and then the implementation is very different across the DPU vendors, and they all have strengths and weaknesses with how they did the implementation. So there's if we're going to actually release something useful to people, what the boundaries are and how those interactions occur seems like it would be a topic that has to be solved. And it looked to me from what I saw of the networking, although maybe I haven't gone deep enough, that you'd considered some of that in where you're putting, what code is being proposed and what API integration is being proposed. But maybe I'm mistaken, and more needs to be done there.
Yeah. So what we have is, we have looked at the gRPC level APIs, but how it translates it further into an underlying implementation is not standardized by far. We have discussed things on how this could map into various implementations, like maybe OVS, maybe Oven, those kind of things, but that's not the discussion we have had so far.
Okay. All right. So we'll continue this topic. We'll continue this topic. Like I said, I'll talk to Mark today and tee him up for July 13th. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay. Any other topics we should put on the future agenda list? Is there anything anybody thinks we should have a review and direct more, or quote steer more, since we're a steering committee, or any other sort of background policy or working documents that we need? And if you don't want to answer on the phone right here, just drop a Slack chat or an email about them, and we'll put them on the future work list. And then finally, given that it's July 4th week next week, July 4th is on the Tuesday, as I said. On the Thursday is July 6th. Do we have the TSC meeting on July 6th, or do we defer to July 13th, given the the very large US holiday coming?
I would say defer to 13th.
Anyone else have an opinion?
I agree.
Agree.
Okay, so I will put that as the final. I'll put that in the announcements. Okay, we'll defer the. All right. You don't have to. Okay. Any other topics at all? All right. So we'll meet again in 2 weeks, and we'll say congratulations again to Gal and Tazi and NVIDIA, and we'll spend time over the next 2 weeks getting Gal squared away, and we'll go from there. All right. Anything occurs to you, just let me know, and we'll get it teed up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.